You are Locked On Bulls Postcast, part of Locked On Sports Chicago on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Bulls Postcast here on the Locked On Sports Chicago YouTube channel. I'm Joe George, sports talk host and longtime Chicago sports fan, longtime suffering Chicago sports fan. Tough one for the Bulls tonight. They moved to 3-3 on the season, lose 120-112. Lots to get into in this game. The 17-point deficit, they come all the way back, but they collapse in the fourth quarter. Vooch is clearly the key to the success of the Chicago Bulls this year. We'll do a little bit of a dive into what's going on in the first half and specifically the first quarter struggles for the Chicago Bulls. Make sure you hit that subscribe button here on Locked On Sports Chicago. Thanks for listening here on YouTube or the Locked On Bulls audio feed, and make sure you hit that YouTube channel as well, Locked On Bulls on YouTube, for daily Bulls content here from Locked On Sports and the Locked On Sports Network. All right, let's get into tonight's game. So the Bulls once again are down by 17 points, the third straight game in which they are down by and have a major deficit. It's unbelievable that it looked like at one point, pretty clearly in the fourth quarter, felt like the Bulls were going to win this game and be down 17 plus points in three straight games and find a way to win. That obviously does not happen in this loss. And trying to figure out what happened is kind of fascinating in this one, because this was it felt like, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it felt like this was the quickest the Bulls came back from this deficit. So kind of as I'm watching, the question just becomes, how do they handle this? What is the rest of the game going to look like? But right away, you get 7 out of 10 points from Nikola Vucevic in this game. And pretty quickly, it's key. Once again, they're using him as the main point of this offense. In last game, we saw it was Giddey and Vooch were the guys running the pick and roll and the pick and pop and all these things. Today it was a little bit more Kobe White, and it was nice to see Zach LaVine back out there, and we'll get into his first half and game overall. Him, Patrick Williams, and Jalen Smith all were questionable for this game, but Cam Thomas then makes it a 19-13 game with a 3. Billy Donovan has to call a timeout with about 6 minutes left to go in the first quarter, and the Bulls are down 37-30 at the end of the first quarter. In the second quarter, a lot doesn't change. They're outscored by a ton of points in this game, in that half, in the paint. This is a real problem for the Chicago Bulls, and I don't know what the solution is going to be. But at one point in the first half, it was 34-12 in the paint in favor of the Brooklyn Nets. The Brooklyn Nets, who don't really have a big man on their roster, scored over 66 points in this game. It was unbelievable having to watch this game and see the ghost of Ben Simmons be effective attacking the paint in this one, because the Bulls weren't getting back in transition in the first half. It was just frustrating watching this team. Cam Thomas, that guy is just lighting it up all over the place. But they get down by 17 points, and at that point, when they're down 15, Vooch hasn't scored since he scored 7 of the first 10 points of the game. So they completely go away from what's working early on in the game. You get it back down to 4 in the third quarter as the Nets come out ice cold, and they went on this 30-24 run in the third quarter. What's impressive about that one is Zach LaVine, no points. No points at all in the third quarter. He barely even out there. So once again in this game, a positive from this loss is that you are getting real good minutes from your bench, and they are consistently impacting the game and helping you lead these comeback charges. It's funny, the starters aren't playing badly when they're getting, at least on offense, when they're in these giant deficits. Zach LaVine and Kobe White have 31 points combined in the first half. Zach LaVine has 5 threes in the first half, yet you find yourself down by 10 points at the end of the second quarter. Your bench unit does their job. A little bit of a different group tonight. I don't think Modest played at all in this one, unless he got some sympathy seconds there at the end of the game. But we see THT check in early in this game. Doesn't come back in the second half, but the second half was more the Dalen Terry show in tonight's game. But look, I just don't know. They got to stop doing this. It's really as simple as that. This is not hard for the Bulls. The Bulls are it's very clear who they are this season. In the first half, they had over 8 turnovers. So sloppy basketball. We're seeing some of the stuff that we saw right when the season started. Some passes that they're trying to get into small windows. They're leading to turnovers. They're not getting back on defense in transition. They're just letting guys run up and down the court, and they're losing their guys on three-point shots. You heard Stacey Smith talk about it a lot at the end of the game, where like there's one guy on the Nets who can score. It was a little bit different in the first half, but they're just not blitzing him, and they're just letting Cam Thomas just shoot threes. That guy is cold-blooded and has no fear whatsoever. I don't know if he's a good basketball player, but he sure as hell is a good stat sheet stuffer, because he is just putting them up left and right for the Brooklyn Nets. You get it. You have a 4-point lead, or you have a lead in the fourth quarter. Brooklyn goes on this 10-point run to make it 104-100, and look, the game's not over at that point, but that's just, okay, how do they respond the rest of the game? And then it just got really ugly basketball at the end, where you don't like to see it. It's hard to take like a ton away from the end of the game, as they end up just, falling apart and getting outscored by 6 in the fourth quarter. But it's a fun game for the Chicago Bulls, but it's a tough one because you could have moved to 4-2 on the season. You're playing an Eastern Conference foe. You've got some wins over some quality teams. And you play Brooklyn tonight, and that's not a good basketball team in the long run. I think Adam Amin said on the broadcast, I think their win total was like 20.5 this season. So they're projected to be one of the worst teams in the league. And I honestly, I find it sickening to lose to a team that Ben Simmons is on. I cannot believe that guy is still even in the league, let alone making an impact. But you look at this game, big picture. What you do like about it, Nikola Vucevic, 28 points, 10 for 11 from the field in this game. Only took 4 3-pointers. Kobe White and Zach LaVine both go 5 for 9 from the 3-point line, 21 points each on the night. So 42 points combined on the night, and a total of 10 for 18 from the 3-point line. Now, Josh Giddey, a lot of praise from him on the last show if you're listening or watching. This game was not his best. 0 for 4 from the 3-point line. It's the 3-point shooting for him is something that's going to be fascinating to watch all season. Started out really strong, 10 for 16 on the season. Can't hit one very easily at all tonight, but still found a way to be really effective for the Bulls in this game. 11 assists, and he was attacking quite a bit. One thing I thought was interesting to see pretty often early in this game, that was a clear decision. Maybe this is a Brooklyn thing. Maybe this is something we're going to see evolve, was Josh Giddey was making a conscious effort to drive to the bucket, and he never had any intention of going, it felt like, all the way. He was finding a way to kick it out to open guys, and as you're struggling in the first half, but you're still shooting threes pretty well, he's the one that's just kicking them out, 1, 2, 3, and you're getting those shots constantly from Zach LaVine and Kobe White. But Ayo Dosunmu, not a great night, 3 for 11 from the field, 10 points, but, it's just, this team, this is a letdown. Because you just thought it was going to happen again. You thought the Bulls were going to pull off magic 3 straight games. And it's something that is clearly, you don't need me to tell you, this is not sustainable basketball for the Chicago Bulls. You cannot consistently get down by 17 plus points and either win a game or have a chance to win the game. They have to find a way to start better in the first quarter. They're a minus 33 on the season in the first quarter. It's totally, utterly unacceptable. When Vooch is going that well and they completely go away from him, it makes no logical sense. That third quarter, besides your bench unit, it's led by Nikola Vucevic, just leading them back into this game. We're going to do kind of a more of a deep dive into what he's doing here in this next segment, but it's a bummer that they couldn't pull this one out. They lose 120-112 to the Brooklyn Nets. Thought they had a chance for a third straight game of a comeback of 17 plus points. They can't get it done, but we'll talk about Nikola Vucevic next. Make sure you find me on Twitter at JoeGeorge92, at JoeGeorgeRadio on TikTok and on Instagram. Hit that subscribe button here to the Locked On Sports Chicago YouTube channel. Let's talk about Vooch and what he's doing for this team when we get back here on the Locked On Bulls Postcast on the Locked On Sports Chicago YouTube channel.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. You missed out on the $250, but now they got the $150 for you. That still helps you out quite a lot. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. I've been telling you guys how important that is of a tool to get all the information you need on the same page where you place your bets. It just streamlines that whole process. So go to FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com. You get started with $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you win your first $5 bet. When you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
All right, so tonight, Nikola Vucevic on the day, 28 points, 11 rebounds, 3 of them offensive, 8 on the defensive board, 1 block, nice block, little volleyball-style block in this game. He gets a steal, and he has 3 assists in this game, but he's 10 for 11 from the field, 3 of 4 from the three-point line, 5 for 5 from the free throw line. Nikola Vucevic, if this Bulls team is going to be good this season, if they're going to win, more than 36 games and be a competitor for the play-in spot, in where my view is the bottom of the Eastern Conference is still pretty terrible. I do not believe that the Bulls will miss the play-in tournament at a minimum if they win 38 games. So that's kind of a low benchmark. If that's your goal, you might be a fan that wants to tank. I'm not pro-tank when you have this roster, because I just don't think you're going to be good enough to be in a position to win a lottery. So there's no point in doing that. Just try to win as many games as possible. And Nikola Vucevic is going to make all of that possible for this team. He scores 7 of the first 10, and like I said in the last segment, if you didn't hear it, they completely go away from him at that point. Vooch does not score again until after they are down by 15 points. So they completely go away from their bread and butter and what is working for them. He gets his 5th double-double of the season. They've played 6 games. This dude is a double-double machine. I think they said this makes it his 519th double-double, I believe it is, of his career. So he's just all over the place on the glass. And you need a little bit more from him still. Like, the amount of threes they're taking, a lot are going in. They were shooting over 40% in the first half, which is a huge win for them, even being down all those points. So they're making a good amount of their shots. But you need more rebounding still, really from Patrick Williams. But if he's not going to give it to you, I know he's banged up a little bit, but Vooch has got to be the guy who's just got to get as many rebounds and just gobbling them up as much as possible. But he was 9 for 9 and had 24 points at one point. He makes his next shot to go 10 for 10. I think he finally missed his next one. So he was just all over the place for this team. But whether it's the last game and they are, running this, this 2-man game with Josh Giddey where they're isolating 3 guys on one side of the court and it's Vooch and, Giddey on the other one, or they did something similar with Kobe White, which I like from Billy Donovan. I like that he was, doing different things and of how they're going to use him. But Stacey King's pointing this out on the broadcast, and it's totally fair. They just decide to go away from him at some point. And when you get down early, Zach LaVine and Kobe White have to shoot threes. They have to do it to try to get back in this game, to stay alive in this basketball game. And that's what they did in the first half. Like, even though they were down 10 at the end of the second quarter, even though they were down by 17 at one point in the second quarter, they have to shoot threes to stay in it. But when they're running this fast-paced style, one thing they can't forget is Nikola Vucevic. And they just do it too often. It's like he's not even out there. But Vooch is such a willing passer that he will make the 3-point shots be open. He will be there to pass the ball to Kobe White. He will be there to pass the ball to Zach LaVine or to Ayo. Like, he can be that guy that is going to be a triple-double machine. He honestly, Nikola Vucevic should have a ton of triple-doubles this season. We know he's going to score. We know he's going to get rebounds. And we know the Bulls can shoot. And we know that if they just give him the ball more often, more concentrated, that he has the chance to kick it and they will hit their shots. Or if they make their shots, his assist total is just going to skyrocket this season. The opportunity is there for Vooch, but it's just, that's maybe through 6 games the most frustrating part. Well, I don't know. I guess the being down massive amount of points in the first half has to be number one on the frustrating power rankings here for the Chicago Bulls early in this season. But willingly going away from Vooch just doesn't really make sense when the offense looks so much cleaner and crisper. And most importantly for me, it just looks easier. Everything looks easy for Vooch. I do agree with this here from Zach. Turnovers, super frustrated. I would put them number 3 on this list. I would go number 1 is going to be the early point deficits, which turnovers is a part of, not going to Vooch, and then the reckless turnovers, because we've seen that pretty consistently in their 3 losses this season, and in these 2 games that they've won, being down by 20, where they're giving up a ton of turnovers. And the thing is, too, is they're not forced takeaways. Like, it's not like the Brooklyn Nets are, Ben Simmons isn't his defensive player of the year self that we used to see in Philadelphia. He's just kind of out there attacking the bucket. But too many times the Chicago Bulls are just turning it over. I know they want to be fast, but when they play this fast, what they're losing is good shots, getting the ball to Vooch, and really just the ability to hold on to the basketball. This is where I do think partially you miss a lot of Lonzo. Not having Lonzo out there to kind of help control the pace of this game and rely on Josh Giddey and Io to be those guys, that feels like a major part in these 2 games we've seen post Lonzo. I guess it's been 3 games. He's only played in half the games this season. 2 games now with injury, 1 game because it was a back-to-back. And I guess they said 10 days. So we got about maybe 6-7 days left. I think it was 10 days, not 10 games that they expected him to be out. So not the end of the world that, before Thanksgiving we'll see the return of Lonzo Ball, but they just got to find a way to play, cleaner and crisper basketball pretty consistently in this one. And going to Vooch will just alleviates a lot of that stuff. And sometimes it's not just about the pick and roll game where I feel like Billy Donovan goes away from that and just decides, and maybe it's not Billy Donovan, like you can't blame it all on the coach. And I feel like he is an easy guy to pick on right now as the Bulls coach. I mean, he's got to be one of the favorites to be the first coaches fired this season. If this thing falls off the tracks pretty quickly, it does feel like it might be the end of the road unless Jerry Reinsdorf is typical Jerry and too cheap to fire a coach mid-season because he doesn't want to pay someone not to work for him. But so we blame Billy Donovan for a lot of stuff. But so I don't know if it's his decision to go away from Vooch or the players are just not seeing it. From Stacey King's perspective, and I will trust Stacey and as many words of wisdoms of that he drops on us, which I think we might have to start doing at some point, the best Stacey King-isms that we get in the game, because he's always dropping gems on us. Whether it's Sriracha or just the Voochie Man, which is always, I know it's one of his nicknames officially on Pro Basketball Reference, but always gets me a little chuckle when he does that, or when Stacey King sings. I do appreciate the singing of the Nationwide commercials on a pretty consistent basis. He never misses a shot to show off the pipes on a broadcast. So he's mentioned a ton, is they just don't look for him. They don't look for Vooch. I don't know if it's fair to say. I'm curious what you have to think. You can let us know in the comments at JoeGeorge92 on Twitter, or just if you're watching this video after the fact, drop a comment. Doing my best to respond to everyone that we see on there. I think there is an argument that Vooch is still the best player on this roster, that as talented as Zach LaVine is, Vooch is the best player. And if he's not the best player, he's absolutely the most important player on this roster. And if they want to just have more success this season, Billy Donovan has to get these guys to keep him involved in the game. It's more frustrating than anything to see a guy go 7 of 10 or score 7 out of the first 10 points for the Bulls, the other one being a LaVine 3, and then not score again until after the team is down by 15 points. You would think that in these timeouts that Billy Donovan's calling, he would say, hey, let's go back to Vooch. Like, let's get him the ball. And one criticism of Billy Donovan before we talk more about these first half struggles on tonight's show and just what's happening kind of in tonight's game and over the season is, okay, in the last game, when they're coming back from down 20, I thought Billy Donovan was really smart with how long he kept the bench unit in there. And before he brought back in LaVine and Vooch. Tonight, maybe this is nitpicky. I feel like tonight was just a little too long. Just a couple minutes where Brooklyn really creeped back into this game, and it really felt like the momentum, it was starting to swing back the other direction, and Brooklyn was going to be able to get the win over the Bulls tonight. So just didn't love the idea of how long the bench unit was there in the end of the third and early into the fourth quarter when things just kind of started to get away from you a little bit. Make sure you find me on Twitter at JoeGeorge92. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet to Locked On Sports Chicago, and hit that subscribe button on Apple, Spotify, wherever you find your podcasts, to the Locked On Bulls podcast feed. Audio drops there immediately after. So if you ever jump in mid-show, don't have time to watch the video, and want to listen on your ride to work the next day, or I guess on the weekend while you're doing some work outside, and we're right around the corner from most people shoveling snow, You can always do that. Hit that subscribe button and give us a listen there as well. We can catch all the Locked On Bulls content throughout the week. All right, let's get into what's going on in the first quarter and the first half of the Bulls' struggles this season. This is the Locked On Bulls postcast here on the Locked On Sports Chicago YouTube channel. All right, Gametime. Gametime, my go-to app to get tickets for any game, NBA, NFL, but also for concerts as well. They take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime picks. And that new feature, it makes getting tickets to see your favorite team even easier. Gametime picks filters out the fluff to show you incredible deals on great seats. You don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. This is a huge perk. One of my favorites is the view from your seat when you're looking through what's available. It's great for a game. It's even better for a concert. I did that for the first time the other day. Obviously you see it from the field perspective or from the stadium perspective, but usually you can figure out where the concert is going to be mostly taking place. So that gives you a huge view of what you're looking at on Gametime. Great deals all the time. And my favorite feature, like I just said, it's the panoramic views. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. What time is it? It's game time. Negative 33-point differential for the Chicago Bulls in the last 3 games. They have in the first quarter. They have not outscored a team, I believe, so far this season in the first quarter. The first 3 games were not as dramatic as this one. They were all pretty close scores early, but the Bulls are just really struggling in these games early, and it's they got to find something. This might go back to the Vooch conversation. I do think that while Zach LaVine was incredible in the first half, still, again, besides just Vooch, I feel like they don't actively try to get Zach LaVine involved in the offense, which is funny because this is a guy that we all have watched for years now, and we get frustrated watching Zach LaVine because sometimes it feels like he thinks he's a player that he's not. I love Zach LaVine. I if you've listened so far to this show, I can't quit Zach LaVine. I still want to believe in Zach LaVine. I feel like if the Bulls trade him, he's going to win a championship elsewhere and be a big reason for that for another team. So I still don't want to totally quit on what he can do. And part of that is that in these games, he's totally MIA early on. And unless he's getting, finding the turnover and hitting the 3, Zach LaVine is just not actively a member of this. This is where I feel like the turnovers are the biggest problem and the points in the paint are the biggest problem. Brooklyn did a really good job tonight of kind of going with their pace but attacking early. And they were taking their 3s when they could get them, but they helped grow that lead very quickly once again against the Bulls by having success in the paint. 34-12 in the first half. And it was too much. It was too much to overcome in the end. At some point the Bulls are going to go on these runs, but you can't withstand these runs all the time unless you give yourself a 10-point lead. 8+ turnovers in the first half. So the sloppiest play that the Bulls have, sometimes the worst 3-point shooting that the Bulls have. Tonight was in the third quarter, in the fourth quarter, not in the first half, but they just consistently come out and are not playing good enough basketball in the first quarter. To be outscored by 33 points, in the last 3 games is a real red flag for this team. And so now when you look at the Bulls and what's next for this team in the immediate future for their next game against the Utah Jazz, Lauri Markkanen revenge game coming up here if he's healthy. Big if there. Honestly not sure these days with him. But they got to find a way to just keep it close in the first half, but specifically in the first quarter. Now, we did see in this game, the lead extended to 17 in the second. In the last 2 games, the lead extended to 20 in the second quarter. That's not all happening in the first, but the Bulls are just giving up so many points in the paint, and they're so sloppy with the basketball at times in the first half that they're having a really hard time, just not doing that at all. I mean, Zach LaVine and Kobe White, if they don't score 31 points, if Zach LaVine doesn't have 5 threes in the first half, the Bulls are losing this game, are down by 30 in the first half. And Brooklyn's not, exactly raining threes against you. They're hitting them, But again, they are making their shots, you're making yours, but they're scoring a ton of points in the paint, and you are not. So there's two parts to this, the offensive side of it and the defensive side. Billy Donovan, this is where this does fall on the coaches. He has to make some kind of adjustment here. He has to find a way to get the Bulls to not be giving up so many points in the first half. We talked about this on the last show. I'm not saying take Patrick Williams out of the starting lineup. I wouldn't be opposed, but I'm kind of ready to, now that Jalen Smith was back in this game, limited action, didn't hit his first bucket till the second half of the game. I mean, even not until the fourth quarter. But if you're getting killed in the paint, it might be time to go to Jalen Smith a lot earlier. Like that might be something the Bulls need to consider doing if a team like Brooklyn, who's not that big, has a ton of success in the paint versus you, which is kind of fascinating, where I felt like they did an okay job. I'm not sure what the exact numbers were against the Grizzlies, but the Grizzlies were huge. That's a massive basketball team. And I just felt like the Bulls were better in that one just by, thinking back of memory versus what we're seeing in this one. So it's a tough one for the Bulls to lose this game. You thought they were going to pull off the magic 3 straight games, but having a negative 33-point differential in the first quarter as a team, it's just not going to cut it at all. They have to find a way, if they're going to be a good team this season, to absolutely stop that. This is not sustainable. There's no ifs, or ands, or buts, or whats. This is not sustainable basketball. But what we've seen through these games, and why it's not a major issue for the Chicago Bulls, is that this team can still put up a ton of points, and if they just slow down a tiny little bit, get Vooch involved, and get Zach LaVine some more buckets early, they can win basketball games and not be doing it having to be down by 17 plus points. It's not going to work. It's not going to last, but we'll see what's next for them. Hope you guys all had a great Halloween. We'll be back on Monday for Locked On Bulls postcast. We'll be back on Sunday probably around 6:15, 6:30 after the Bears and Arizona Cardinals game. That's going to be a tough one. A lot of injuries on that one. So for the Bears in this one, make sure you're here for all Locked On Bulls postcast, Bears, Notre Dame football, and Cubs games when we get back on to baseball season. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on Locked On Sports Chicago on YouTube. Follow me on Twitter at JoeGeorge92. You can find out what else I got going on in the world of a busy time in my life. So thank you for hanging out with us tonight. Bulls lose 120-112, move to 3-3 on the season after this loss from the Brooklyn Nets. We will talk to you for another edition of the Locked On Bulls postcast on Monday. Bears this coming Sunday. Peace.